Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
So his contract is $93 million for 3 years.
Yeah.
So let me try and put myself in the room when they're negotiating the deal. Do the Dodgers, is it like this? Do the Dodgers say, we'll give you $90 million for 3 years, so that's 30 a year. That's a good number.
Right.
And then Kershaw's agent says, no. 90's not enough. We need 93.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, we talk MLB hot stove,
The NFL.
and NHL news.
But let's start with college basketball.
Okay, Skip, here we go.
I have a lot of little things that I took a lot of notes this week. I have a lot of different topics. Could be one of those episodes where we kind of ramble and go from topic to topic.
All right, let's go then. You start.
I have a feeling I know where you want to start, and I think it's where I want to start.
I don't even know where I want to start, so how could you know where I want to start?
I know it's not college basketball season. It's just started. And
It is college basketball season.
It is. But we don't usually talk about it at this point in the year. I know many of our listeners, maybe college basketball is not their thing until March Madness comes. But I feel like we really need to talk about that Duke-Kentucky game from 2 nights ago.
We absolutely have to talk about it.
I've never been so excited about a Duke team in a while. Honestly, and I don't know if it's just because, look, they blew
Well, hold on.
out
We have to
Kentucky.
say, because the listeners don't know, in case they didn't watch the game, Duke defeated Kentucky.
Yes.
And Duke, before the game, was ranked 4 in the country. Kentucky was ranked number 2. And Kentucky was favored by 2 points before the game began. And the final score was Duke 118, Kentucky, I believe, 84.
Yes. And Duke had 60 points at the half, which is pretty nuts. I feel like a connection to this Duke team, and I'm sure you do as well, because the listeners know we followed this team in August when they came to Toronto and Montreal, and Josh went to all the games and was at the press conferences, and we went to the game in Montreal together. So I feel like I know this team a lot more than I do a typical Duke team at this point in the year. This point in the year, usually I'm like, who's this guy? Who's that guy? What number is he? What number is he? I felt like I knew who they all were. I knew Cam Reddish obviously didn't play in the Canadian tour, but I felt like I kind of knew these guys. And everything that we saw in the Canadian tour was as advertised and more and more. How much firepower do they have? It's unbelievable.
So a few things. Yes, I definitely know them better than I would any other Duke team, because not only did I go to all 3 of those games, I was in the locker room with these guys after the game. I've seen them all half naked. I know them very well.
Right.
And so now when I see them on television and I hear people talking about them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the Australian guy, or that's the tall guy, or I guess they're all tall, but whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, So I definitely know the team much better than I normally would. So my thoughts about the game, I missed the first half. I wasn't home. When I turned it on, there was a minute left in the first half.
It was over after 3 minutes.
And the game, it was already over. There was no point in watching the second half. I'm like, you had texted me saying, oh my God, we're good. I didn't know what that meant because I didn't know the score yet. And then when I turned on the TV and I saw the score, I'm like, oh, that's what he means by, oh my God, we're good.
At one point, the score was 35-12 or something. It was obscene, the score.
And then, teams make adjustments at halftime, and you think maybe Kentucky's going to come out and have a big run at the beginning of the second half. But 2 minutes into the second half, Kentucky never made any kind of run. In fact, they had to call a timeout, and you knew the game was over 2 minutes into the second half. What actually scared me, and scared is the right word here, I couldn't believe that Duke was running up the score as much as they were. And I'm like, okay, when are the starters going to come out? Because you don't want to piss off John Calipari or the Wildcats, because you may have to play them again in the tournament or something, and they're not going to forget this. Right. And when are the subs coming in? And you know what? They didn't come in until there was less than 2 minutes left. And even then, not all of them came in.
Well, you texted me at one point saying, at what point does Brendan Besser get to come into the game?
He never came in.
And now, for people who don't realize, Brendan Besser is literally the last man on the roster. Josh interviewed him. He's a non-scholarship player. He's an actual student athlete, and Duke always has a guy like this. And you asked me, when is he going to come in? And I said, well, according to Coach K, how he normally coaches, he won't come in until under a minute or 45 seconds, if at all. And then he didn't come in. He was not in the game. Yeah.
And the other thing is, so, Javin Delorier, not a starter. He played big minutes. Jack White, not a starter. He played big minutes. Yeah. Alex O'Connell, not a starter. He played big minutes. The fact of the matter is, Duke could have used, I think, almost anybody in this game, and it looked like they would have won the game no matter what. I mean, obviously, RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson and Reddish and Jones, they all had great games. But it's like, even when some of those guys were not in the game, Duke was still dominating.
I feel like the way that he's going to coach this year is everything's going to revolve around the three, Reddish, Williamson, and Barrett, obviously. And then everybody else is going to sub in and out, Like, and certain guys are going to have good games and certain guys are going to step up. And one game we may see a certain player have big minutes depending on the matchups. But I think the bulk of the offense is just going to come from those three guys and everybody else is going to just chip in.
And Jones as well.
Yeah, but Jones, I don't see him.
Tyus Jones' younger brother, by the way.
Trey Jones. I don't see him as like a real dynamic offensive player. I just see him as a good player.
No, but he brings defense that Duke didn't have last year.
He certainly does, especially on the ball.
And the thing is with these guys, like, they can play any position. Like, any one of them can bring the ball up the floor. It doesn't matter. It's not like there's only one guy that can do that.
Yeah, it's a different. Every year I say, oh my God, we have a different team this year, because some years Duke are like only chucking threes, and then we go to like last year where we couldn't shoot any threes and we were like a post team. We were full of big men, and this year I feel like we're going to score in many different ways. It's going to be from threes. It's going to be mid-range. It's going to be a lot of attacking the basket. A ton. We're going to see a lot of dunks. We're going to see a lot of layups. We're going to see a lot of fouls. We're going to see a lot of drives. And it's going to be a fun year. Like, buckle up. It's going to be a fun year if you're a Duke fan, So a few comments, a few observations. I was stunned at the final score. I was stunned at how easily Duke won the game. I knew, obviously, when I saw the game against Ryerson in Toronto in August, I'm like, okay, This is Ryerson. Yeah.
But, like, honestly, it felt like the same thing against Kentucky. Like, Kentucky was never in this game at any point.
No, and you know how I always say, well, you say, it's not me and you, it's a known fact, basketball's a game of runs, right? And when you come out to a lead, the other team is at one point gonna punch you back and get their run going. A good team, and the whole way that you win is by holding that run off, and just pushing through it and trying to limit the other team's run. And because of Duke's firepower, Kentucky could never get on a run, because as soon as they would score 2 or 3 baskets in a row, they couldn't get any stops, right? Like at one point, Barrett's just going to take it to the basket and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, there's just nothing you can do about it.
So you're excited, as probably most Duke fans are. I'm actually a little nervous because
expectations rise. I know.
Now the expectations are through the roof, and people are talking about an undefeated season, which is ridiculous.
Oh, that's absurd.
But then when I look at the schedule, they have what, 4 or 5 maybe difficult games. Like there's the 2 games against North Carolina, there's the 2 games against Virginia, and then who else?
You can't just dismiss games against North Carolina State, Syracuse. Like, just conference play is tough. It's tough.
Fair point. This weekend, Duke is playing Army.
Well, I mean, there's a win. I mean, that doesn't count.
Like, what if Duke beat Kentucky by 34? Was it? What's the final going to be against Army?
You can't. I know. The expectations are going to be so high now because we're going to think we're going to win every game by 40. It just doesn't work that way. Some nights your shots fall. Some nights the other team shots don't fall.
And if you're playing a team that likes to hold on to the ball, you don't get as many possessions.
Yeah, exactly. Kentucky's like run and gun just like us. So it was up and down,
So by the way, just a listener's note here, or a viewer's note, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. You're going to be in the United States this weekend, so you don't care. You'll watch the game. But for people in Canada, you can watch the game on tsn.ca on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Wow. I guess TSN's going to have a lot of Duke games because of Barrett, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I watched a little bit of the Kansas, Michigan State, which was the other, top teams in the country. And they both look great as usual. And Kansas looks loaded as usual. And they are also a very, very dynamic team that's going to be able to score in many, many different ways. And the interesting thing always about Kansas is that they're not always so loaded with freshmen. They always have a little bit more veteran presence,
Well, they have Azubuike, who's back from last year. And need I remind you that Duke was eliminated by Kansas in the Elite Eight, I think it was?
Yeah. Azubuike is he's a handful. Let me tell you. It's not every team in the country that's going to be able to slow this guy down.
Well, I don't know if any team can.
And even if you could slow him down on the offensive end, just what he does in terms of defense and rebounding.
But I'm told he's not a very good free throw shooter, so teams will probably try to foul him.
Yeah.
Can we go back to talk about Duke for a second? There's one thing we forgot to mention about the first game. I don't know if you noticed, they have this guy Joey Baker who reclassified. He was supposed to still be in high school, but he decided to come out of high school a year early.
Yeah.
And he actually played in the games in Canada and played really well.
Yeah.
He didn't play at all in the first game of the season. He was one of the only two guys, I think, that didn't even play a minute. Mm-hmm. And then I read some things about him the day after the game. I think they're considering redshirting him because, well, A, they don't really need him, as you can see. And B, I think he's a year younger than all the other guys. And he's not a one-and-done guy. Like, he's going to be there next year. So I think that's why he didn't play, so they can technically still redshirt him because he hasn't played a minute yet.
If anybody's wondering what redshirting is out there, it means that he's going to go to school for a year, but he's not going to play sports during that year. He's not going to lose his year of school of sports eligibility.
Right. I think he can practice with the team, but he can't.
Yeah. But I mean, the players only have 4 years of eligibility, and they figure they don't want to waste it on this year, probably because they're so loaded and probably because he's so young. So he'll go to school at Duke, and he'll come back next year and hopefully play.
He'll have a whole year under his belt. The thing is, though, if he's planning on playing 4 years, then yes, it's a great idea. I don't think he's going to be at Duke for 4 years because he's too good of a player. So it doesn't really matter if he loses a year of eligibility, but when are you going to play this guy? I mean, you saw the lineup and the rotation they used in the first game. How is this guy going to get any minutes?
There's a lot of guys ahead of him on the depth chart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's it for college basketball.
The National Hockey League.
You want to talk a little hockey? I only had one little thing to talk about in hockey, and if you don't want to talk about it, we can just move on.
Well, is it the Ottawa Senators?
Yeah, I just find it's an interesting story. I know we're a bit late on this because this is when we're recording, but that Uber video of the Senators in the car, I mean, there's so many things I want to know about this, and not the things that you think of. Like everybody's talking about like, how could they say this in front of a driver that they don't know, and it's so unprofessional. Whatever. Haven't you ever been in the back of an Uber with coworkers or somewhere in a restaurant or in a public place talking about other coworkers? I do it all the time.
100%.
I mean, the other part of the story is
they didn't do anything wrong, by the way, the players. I don't think they did anything wrong.
Other than maybe a little bit of bad judgment about...
No, because they didn't know they were being recorded.
No, but you have to be a little bit wary about maybe that someone could record you. I know you're right. It's very far-fetched to think that the Uber driver is going to record you. I mean, the other part of the story is what a scumbag move by the Uber driver.
That's the first thing I that came to my mind when I saw the video the first time. I'm like, how could this guy do that?
I mean, I don't know if there's repercussions. I don't know if Uber's going to fire him or whatever.
Well, Uber did come out with a statement, but it wasn't a very harsh statement or anything. They said they're looking into it. What do you have to look into? You know who the driver is.
It's clear as day.
You have a record of the transaction in your computer system. I mean, either do something to the driver or don't, but what is there to look into?
These are the questions that I'm asking. What rating did those 7 senators give the Uber driver? Did he get 5 stars?
I don't know.
And what did the Uber driver rate those guys? I hope he gave the passengers 5 stars. He gave them a video that's gold.
Did you hear? Like, I read something, and I don't know how accurate or true this is, of why the driver posted it online. Did you hear that?
No.
Because the guys didn't give him a tip.
Oh, well, look, you can judge me or you don't judge me. I think I've given a tip to an Uber driver once.
Yeah, me once or twice.
I mean, the whole thing is like, to me, the whole thing about Uber is you don't have to give a tip. That's the whole point. You know, it's a cashless transaction. I mean, they message you after saying, do you want to leave a tip? I mean, if the guy went out of his way, and there's a couple, maybe once or twice where I thought the guy really went out of his way, either to avoid traffic or to like, he was super nice in the car and friendly and we had a great conversation. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe he knew they were professional athletes. He expected a tip from them. Kind of bizarre, no? The other big conspiracy theory is, which is, I'm not going to take credit for this one because I heard it on the radio in Montreal. The guy on the radio in Montreal was saying that it's Eugene Melnick's fault, this whole thing.
You think he planted the driver?
No, he didn't plant the driver, but maybe the Senators players are under orders to... there's 7 players in the car. 7. Are they under orders to share rides to reduce costs on the road?
Well, I don't think they can expense that anyway, but my question is this.
Yeah.
So obviously the players knew that this video was coming out before we did. They were aware of it.
Well, no, maybe not.
No, they were. They were aware that the video was going to be public before it actually became public.
Okay.
And so the players knew about it. They went to the team. They told the team. So the team internally knew this was coming out. I mean, they didn't know if it was going to come out tomorrow, the day after, whatever, but they knew.
Right.
But my question is, it's not so much a question, really. It's more of a statement. I know they all apologized for the comments they made, but there's no apology on this planet that can fix what you said. Because don't tell me you didn't mean what you said. You meant it.
And it's always out there. They can go to that video replay coach. I forget his name, the one that they were bad.
Marty Raymond.
They can talk to him and say, we're sorry.
Or
Sorry.
Marty Raymond, whatever.
But, the next time they're in that video room with him, going over video, what do you think everybody in the room is thinking?
100%.
It's normal.
Like,
it's human nature.
So either if it was one player, let's say, either the player's got to go or the coach has to go. Because it was 7 players, they can't get rid of 7 players.
And also Shabbat was in the car. That guy's not going anywhere.
They're not going. They're not getting rid of him. No. But I mean, I'd be surprised if Marty Raymond is still a coach on the Ottawa Senators staff next season.
It's funny because they're not going to fire him right away because it's going to make it look like, oh my God, they're only firing him because now they realize he sucks. They're going to have to wait a little bit of time. So
and also it doesn't really matter because they're not going anywhere this year anyway. So whatever.
They'll probably fire him on the day before the Super Bowl or the day of the Super Bowl. So like they'll bury the story so no one's going to talk about it.
Or like, in April, in May, whatever.
Yeah, when
they get rid of the entire coaching staff, because
yeah.
I think all of them, this is the last year of their contract anyway.
Right.
So they'll just say, okay, we didn't renew any of their contracts.
Right.
End of
story.
So
I lied. I said I only had one thing to talk about in the NHL.
Yeah.
I mean, I did want to get there's 2 coaches that were fired this week.
Mm-hmm.
John Stevens was fired by the Kings, replaced by Willie Desjardins. I don't think that's like any news. Coaches get fired all the time, and the Kings, whatever. But what do you think about Joel Quenneville and the Hawks?
So that was, in my opinion,
surprising.
I don't know about surprising. That was a change just for the sake of making a change because...
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I don't know that this new coach is going to make a difference. But the thing is, what actually bugs me is, so you hear about Joel Quenneville and how many wins he has and how many Stanley Cups he has and how can you fire this guy? And all that is true. But I mean, look at the roster that he has had. When you have Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane for the last, 10 years?
And Duncan Keith.
And Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook and all these guys.
The nucleus of the team has been intact.
I mean, I could have coached that team to 3 Stanley Cups.
I don't know about that, but I mean, he certainly did something right to win the cup 3 times. And I know you're saying it's 3 very different teams. I know all those guys that we just mentioned are there, but they've changed. That first Chicago Blackhawks team that won, the first one, I don't know if you realize how great that team was.
Well, who else was on it? That's right. They had Dustin Byfuglien.
They had Andrew Ladd. They had so many players that they just had to get rid of because they couldn't keep them under the cap. Right. So that they got rid of, like, a good portion of the team and just replace them with new guys that came up, and then a couple years later they won again, and then a couple years.
And
later,
I think for each of those Stanley Cups, they might have had 3 different goalies for each of them. Niemi was one of them.
No, I think Corey Crawford was the last 2.
The last 2, okay,
but not the first one. Niemi for sure was the first one. Yeah. But he'll definitely get a job again if he wants one. There's always teams that are going to be looking for him.
He's getting paid, what is it, $5 or $6 million a year to sit at home and watch games? Like, why do you even want a job?
No. I agree. He's not going to take a job right away, but I think eventually he's going to get approached and he's going to take a new job.
If he wants.
And we'll see where the Blackhawks go. Like, is it a new voice in the dressing room? Is that what's needed? Or maybe they just got older. Maybe they're just not as good anymore. I firmly believe Patrick Kane is just as good as he ever was. But I'm not sure about Taves and Keith and Seabrook. It's already
they're all older. You're not going to be in the prime of your career for 10 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of miles on those guys.
By the way, you think that Canadiens fans can be fooled into thinking that this is a French guy because his last name is Quenneville?
They could. They could. That's all I had about hockey.
I had one other thing about hockey since you brought up hockey.
Sure.
This is even older news. I wanted to mention it on our last episode. I forgot. Mm-hmm. But a guy that sits next to me at work last week says to me, "How come there's NHL games in Helsinki, Finland?" And right away when he asked me that question, all I could do was laugh and think of I can't wait to talk about this on our show, because as you know, there's all these games overseas in the preseason and now during the season, and I never understood it. I still don't understand it. Clearly the guy sitting next to me at work doesn't understand it either. He didn't even know it was happening.
These games got a little bit more fanfare than the preseason ones. I literally didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Like you said it on the episode, and I used it in the previously on section because it was so funny. And you're like, I don't know if it happened. Maybe it didn't even happen. Who knows if those games happened? They say they did, but we don't know. But because Patrick Laine was playing in Finland, it got a little bit more. It was a little bit more noteworthy. But I don't know. If the NHL thinks they're going to make money by going there, let them go. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
Exactly. Whatever.
The National Football League.
I don't really want to go into too much of the NFL Week 10.
Okay.
We can look at the matchups and talk about who's playing who and whatever. Mm-hmm. Des Bryant was signed this week. I think it's a non-story. I don't know why the Saints got him. He's not going to be a factor.
I'm going to stop you there for a second because I think it is a story. It's not a surprise that they signed him. What to me is surprising is that it took a team 10 weeks to sign Des Bryant. This guy could have gone to any team he wanted, or he couldn't. But any team that wanted to could have approached him in the last 10 weeks or even more.
But it's shocking that a team that with the most explosive offense in the league, or one of the most, thinks that these guys going to help them. I don't know.
He will help them, and he would help any team. What I don't understand is why didn't a lousy team like Cleveland or Buffalo or the Giants or somebody that actually needs help, why didn't they go out and get him?
Well, those teams, I think, feel like the season's over already, so there's no point,
I don't know. I think Baker Mayfield, who's supposed to be a good quarterback one day, would like to throw to someone like Des Bryant.
He would. He had Josh Gordon, and they took him away from him. So, right? So,
So, the Saints just got better, and they haven't lost since week 1.
Yeah. I think for the Saints, for a few of those teams, but especially the Saints, I think home field advantage is really important.
For sure.
So they're not the same team on the road. We've seen that historically. Mm-hmm. So if they can get that first overall seed in the NFC, that's huge.
Yeah,
because
100%.
I don't know if any team can go into that Superdome and beat them. Drew Brees is so good. It's just ridiculous. Watching him play last week, it was he's so good. It's unbelievable how good he is. He's such a consummate professional, and he's so talented, and he knows how to run that offense. The offense that he has to run, he knows it perfectly. He knows exactly what he needs to do on every play to succeed. The only matchup that I was interested this week in, obviously other than the Eagles-Cowboys, because that's the game I'll be watching, I want to know, we're going to go to the degenerate gambler section of the show.
Gambling. Please bet responsibly.
How did you do in your pool last week with Neil picking for you.
Okay, so Neil had a decent week. I think he ended up with 78 points. Just frame of reference, you ended up with 60 points, and he ended up with 78.
Okay.
Which was good for like 25th place out of 80 people.
Okay. I'm just curious.
That's fine. I mean, I made my own picks this week. I didn't hire anyone to make my picks.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it. You actually, you can really only make 2, maybe 3 mistakes if you want to win a week in this pool.
Okay. Which is really tough.
Yeah, it's really tough.
So knowing that you made your picks, I'd like to know what you did in the Arizona-Kansas City game.
I'm so glad you asked because
Arizona is plus 16.5.
Yes, which is quite a lot. And normally my rule of thumb is if it's more than a touchdown, unless it's the Patriots, I'm taking the underdog.
Unless it's the Patriots, there's an asterisk there.
Yeah, because the Patriots, they always cover.
Yeah.
Unless it's September. But I took the Chiefs.
I think I would too.
I mean, 16.5 is an insane amount of points, but I think
Arizona's that bad, and I think Kansas City's that good.
Yes.
I think the final score is going to be like 45-3.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that insane, but it can be. Like, I can see that happening.
Exactly.
I cannot see somehow Arizona playing over their heads and making it a close game. That I can't see in my head. Whereas I can see it being 45-3.
Yeah, I guess.
And it's in Kansas City, is it not?
Yes, it is.
It's not like it's a road game. So, like,
no, I know.
I mean, what could lead you to believe that Arizona might have a decent game?
I just don't see it. I just can't see I think 16.5. It's crazy. It is.
It's a crazy number. It's a crazy number.
That's all I had for football.
That's actually pretty much all I had for football too.
Major League Baseball.
I want to go with one baseball story before we finish the show.
Okay.
Last week we talked about where Bryce Harper might land.
Mm-hmm.
And then the story came out that they had approached him with a 10-year, $300 million offer, and he turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that popped into my head was, because you talked about it last week, about, I forget which player it was that you said last week.
It was Clayton Kershaw.
Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah.
You said, the first thing that popped into my head when I heard $30 million a season for 10 years was he would have accepted if it was 31.
Maybe.
Or would he? I don't know. Maybe he would have.
No,
that's the first thing I thought of.
In this particular case, because his agent is Scott Boras, and then you have to mention that because Scott Boras could be one of the biggest snakes on the planet.
But I guess like if Boris's number one rule is if his player hits free agency, he is going to hit free agency. He's going to explore his options.
Sure.
You know?
Let him. I don't have any problem with that. And you know what? There's going to be a team that will offer him more than $30 million a year. There will be a team.
It's a big number. The only danger in that strategy is like, and I know it's not the same player because Bryce Harper's in his prime and he's still great. But when Jose Bautista tried to play hardball with the Jays, and then he didn't get a better offer.
Right, and the same thing happened to Edwin Encarnacion.
Exactly. So the only thing that could happen to Bryce Harper is like, what if no one's interested? What if teams don't want to pony up $300 million? Although I find it hard to believe. I think you're right. Someone will because he is a great player. I mean, there's no doubt, you know?
Yeah. And what surprises me, actually, speaking of free agency, is that teams seem to be interested in Manny Machado.
Well, I mean, he's a D-bag. Like, he's an asshole. You know, what are you going to say about him? But, like, he's a great player, you know?
Yeah, he is.
Don't you think? I mean, he's an unbelievable hitter.
Yeah, he is.
And, I mean, defensively, he's incredible. As a shortstop, he's a better than average shortstop. I would even say he's a good shortstop.
Oh, yeah.
As a third baseman, he's basically a Gold Glover, if you ask me. But, yeah, I don't know.
But the fact that there are teams that are trying to get both of them.
That's a lot of money. That's $600 million.
I know. Well, you heard that the Yankees are trying to get both of them, and then they're going to trade Stanton. Did you hear this?
That's crazy.
That's what I heard.
Imagine you just signed Stanton last year and then you trade him.
Well, Stanton would only go to one of the California teams because he's from around that area. So
if you have Stanton, Machado, and Harper, that's like GDP of a small nation in the Caribbean somewhere, no? Pretty much.
Yeah, the offseason in baseball is always quite interesting.
Well, especially you don't often see a player hit free agency at the age that Bryce Harper is, just because he started in the league so young.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, teams are not afraid to give him the big term because he's still so young, right? He's not going to be lousy in 10 years. He's still going to be okay, health, all things being considered for health.
Recommendations.
So I don't want to close the show because there's a few things I wanted to chat about, actually.
Sure, go.
For some reason, the last week or so, I've been listening to all these new podcasts. Well, they're new to me.
Oh, let's hear it. Can't wait.
And I'm just testing them out. So I'm listening to one episode of each of these, and I may or may not listen to another episode of any of these.
Okay, what are they?
I'm just gonna ramble them off to you in no particular order. So one of them is CBS Sports Eye on college basketball.
Okay, that I might give that a try because the college basketball podcast that I listen to, the One Shining podcast, those guys rub me the wrong way because they don't like Duke. The way they talk about Coach K and Duke, I can't deal with it.
Well, the good thing about this one, I listened to one episode and they're neutral. It's CBS. They're not fans or haters of any team.
They're journalists.
Another one, also college basketball. This one from ESPN. It's called Courtside with Greenberg and Dockich.
Oh, I like that. I like Greenberg. He's all right.
Another one, this is nothing to do with sports. Again, I'm going all over the map here. It's called Front Burner. It's a CBC podcast. It's a CBC News podcast, actually. It's about 15 or 20 minutes a day. And they pick a story that's in the news and they go in depth about it. It's quite interesting, actually, depending on what story they decide to talk about. There's this other one. This is not affiliated with any television or radio network. It's called March Madness 365 with Andy Katz. He used to be, I think, with ESPN. He's no longer with ESPN.
Yeah, sure. That's nice. I should try that.
That's another one.
You're trying to brush up on your college basketball this week.
Yes, exactly. There's another one, and this is one I'm not crazy about it. It's put out by Duke, and it's called the Duke Basketball Podcast, but it's too Duke centric, and it's not.
I can't listen to that. No.
And then I think there was that could be it. That's it for the new ones.
How are you doing with Serial season 3?
The new episode just came out today. I haven't listened to it yet.
I find it interesting, but depressing.
So here's the thing about Serial, and maybe I'm missing something, but at the end of every episode, there seems to be a cliffhanger. Like she always says, "That's next time on Serial." But then the
next time you don't find out.
Yeah, you get to the next episode, and she talks about something completely different that has nothing to do with what she was talking about last episode, and you never find out the end of the story. So I don't know, is she waiting till the last episode of the season to wrap everything up?
That's what I'm thinking, that there's going to be some kind of overarching theme or reveal or something at the end that's going to sort of tie things together, because it is a little bit all over the place. Although I do enjoy the stories from week to week, although it's incredibly depressing because it's like these stories of, inner city Cleveland and what goes on. It's pretty awful, It's
making me not trust the justice system at all is what it's making me do. And I mean, I don't know if it's like this in Canada. I hope not.
I don't think it is. I mean, I'm a glass half full guy. I hope it's not like that. Before we sign off, I want to remind everybody that to never miss an episode of the Skip and Josh podcast, you need to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or on iHeartRadio, or on Spotify. On Spotify, it's actually not called subscribe. It's called follow. If you listen to us by Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. You can send us an email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter @skipandjosh. You can also like and follow our Facebook page. And skipandjosh.com has all the links to everything that I just said.
We leave you with this.
So do you remember this basketball player in the NBA, Manute Bol?
Of course, yeah.
So do you know he has a son?
I heard, yeah.
Okay, so his son plays for Oregon.
Okay.
Do you know what his son's name is?
What?
So his last name is Bol.
Bol, yeah.
His first name?
Yeah.
Bol.
Bol?
Yeah.
Love it.
That's his name.
Is he also 7'6", 100 pounds?
I'm not sure.
I couldn't watch Manute Bol play. It was gross. His legs looked like they were going to break when he ran.
It did look that way.
Yeah. So a lot of people sometimes refer to us as like a bit of an old married couple. Me and you.
Well, we are old.
And like many old married couples, I want to we forgot that it was our anniversary. So it's a few days ago, well, like 5 days ago, it was our 2-year anniversary of the release of the Skip and Josh podcast.
So our anniversary is in November, not October?
Well, technically. I mean, if you look on the feed of the show, you'll see like November 8th was the day of the first 2 episode releases.
But we actually started recording in October.
They were recorded, it says it on the descriptions, those 2 episodes were recorded October 22nd. So can you imagine it took 2 weeks for us to like
But we recorded another episode that we never released even a week before that.
Yeah, those were in the archives.
Yeah. So one last thing, I was watching Monday Night Football, not this week, but 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know who the play-by-play guy is on Monday Night Football anymore. But
Jason Witten's the color guy.
Right, but the play-by-play guy was talking to Jason Witten about, I don't know if it was IndyCar or some kind of Formula One racing. Mm-hmm. Apparently he's a big Formula One racing fan.
Okay.
And so Jason Witten, I think, knows nothing about Formula One racing. So the play-by-play guy says, oh, you got to come with me to Montreal in the summer. We got to go to Crescent Street. You're going to love it. I just thought it was hilarious that he's talking about Crescent Street on Monday Night Football.
Because many, many times you told me the best time to come to Montreal is Grand Prix weekend.
100%.
It's a great time to just be outside walking downtown.
Yes.
Just looking at the beautiful people.
It is. It really is.
All right, Josh, I'm going to Chicago tomorrow.
Have a great trip and say hi to Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves for me.
I'll give them a pep talk to make sure they start getting on the winning track.
Okay.